Hello, everybody. I'm Madame Sensei. I'm walking you through my thought process on how I've adapted the GLAD techniques for secondary classrooms, the guided language acquisition development, for a high school setting instead of the elementary school setting that GLAD was designed for. Today, I want to talk to you about my experiments with expert groups. So this was the part where I struggled the most with GLAD, this whole concept of expert groups, but it's honestly where I had the most fun incorporating game-based learning. So first of all, let me tell you what you're supposed to do in GLAD. So you're supposed to have the students count off. So here's a table group, and let's just say hypothetically they've counted off, and this is person number 1, person number 2, person number 3, person number 4, and they've counted off similarly, and they've counted off, and they've counted off, and so you've got every table group, okay? So then you say, oh, number ones, all the number ones come over to me. Okay, I don't know who's the number ones. Everybody's the number ones. Okay, the number ones come over to me. Number 3 and 4, you guys work together on this thing that I've got. And number 2, you're working independently on this other thing that I've got. Okay? So all the number ones come over to you, and they're all sitting around your table, and you have something that you read to them. Energy comes from the sun, and they all repeat it chorally. Okay? And they've got the paragraph in front of them, or the story in front of them, or whatever. And then you're going to ask them to highlight key phrases. Oh, underline this phrase, and then you talk about it a bit, and then now they're experts on whatever they've read, and now you send them back to their table. Remember, because they all came from different tables, and then they teach their table mates what they just learned. All right. So now they've all gone back, okay? And now you call the number 3s over. Let's say these are the number 3s. The number 3s come over now, okay? And you lather, rinse, repeat. You're like, okay, I've got a new group of students now. These other ones are back. Number 1 and 4, you work together. Number 2, you're working on your own or whatever. You got number 3s with you. So this is where I really struggled, because as it turned out, high schoolers, all right, I work with high schoolers. I've got the high schoolers over here. I've got all the number 1s over here. While the number 1s are over here, these guys are speaking in English. These guys are trying to whip out their cell phones. I just could not keep them in the target language. And, maybe this guy needs a little bit of scaffolding. I'm not over there with him. I'm over here. So it was really difficult, because we know that working the room is so important, especially in our language classrooms. So here I am stuck over here. I can't get to these tables and help. Oh, Bob over here, he didn't really understand the instructions. Fred over here, he's dyslexic. He needs me to present the information in a different way. Sue over here has ADHD, and I need to refocus her. Nope, sorry, I'm with these kids. So that proved to be just way too challenging, especially now that I've broken my leg tripping over a student backpack and can't get to them. Then the next problem I had is there's a lot of vocabulary I need them to know so that we can have a conversation. And I've gone through, just like I was talking about Shelley Moore and her concept of baked potatoes and what is your important stuff to teach the students. I'm already down at this. This is the crucial stuff I want you guys to learn. And so if I have an expert group, how do I give them the stuff that they're going to teach to their table mates in such a way that I know that everyone gets the same baked potato? And are my expert groups just the icing on the top of the baked potato? That's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah. So how do I get them to all learn the same information to the same depth? Okay. And then I discovered this was just really outside of their zone of proximal development. I call them over, and we're reading short story or a couple of paragraphs or whatever. It's outside of what they know. What they know is N, or if you're a young whippersnapper, I, is the amount of language that they know. And we want them to be just outside of that, okay? So we want them working at N+1 or I+1, if you want to think of it in those terms, or zone of proximal development, if that's the phrase you've heard. How do I scaffold for everyone if I'm working with just a small group at a table, I'm scaffolding for them, but I'm not scaffolding for anyone else. Then we had a kind of short-term memory loss problem. Okay, this was a Sesame Street thing where this little girl's sent to the grocery store with a list of she needs a stick of bread, a stick of butter, a loaf of bread, and a box of milk. Okay, and she forgets on the way to the store. So, I've just taught my students something that's only in their working memory. It's only in their short-term memory. And I'm like, go back to your tables and teach it to your table mates. They forget by the time they get back to their table, what was it I just learned? Because we didn't really work with it all that long, because I've got 3 other groups to work with. And so I read it with them. I had them chorally repeat. I had them underline key phrases, but we didn't really do anything with it. We didn't really play with it or anything. And then I sent them back to their table mates. They're not really experts at it. The ones who have good short-term memory, okay, they've got it in their short-term memory. They can information dump it to their table mates, but then their table mates aren't really working with it either. So my first thought was maybe a paragraph is just too much. Maybe I should start with a sentence that we're working on. And then my next question is, how do I create expert groups that will actually teach their table mates? Okay, they're capable of teaching their table mates, and their table mates are capable of learning. So I thought we're just going to focus on one sentence that's really crucial instead of a paragraph, instead of several paragraphs. Well, the next question I had is repetition is the key to success. And also repetition is the key to success, plus repetition is the key to success. So we need that drill and kill. We don't want it to be boring because we don't want the students to check out. We want it to be engaging. We want it to stick deeply in their memories. How am I going to get my experts to get that repetition and to give that repetition? So in other words, both the experts and the table groups have to learn the same material to the same depth. And everything has to be within the zone of proximal development. It has to be within N+1 or I+1. It's all the same thing. It's just when I was in school, we called it N+1. And nowadays, everyone's saying zone of proximal development. So most importantly, I have to be able to work the room while they're doing this. I cannot have Bob talking about how nice he thinks Mary's shoes are, or Fred talking about, hey, how'd you do on the calculus test? I need them to be speaking in the target language. So I need to be working the room. I need to be making sure they understand. I need to be making sure they're playing whatever game and engaged in it. I need to make sure that this group is not lost in the woods while this group is getting all the scaffolding. So in our next episode, I'm going to tell you some of my experiments and how I imagined expert groups to work with my situation in secondary school with high schoolers who are coming out of the pandemic and really need engagement. Okay, so thank you for staying with me. And again, if you want to see any of my thoughts more in depth, I've written everything down. I've got a book for free on the Duolingo Educators Network and for free on my website at studio-nemo.com. Thank you very much. See you next time.